In 1974, a tragic miscarriage of justice was turned into South Korea's most heartwarming and highest-grossing film, with 500,000 viewers giving it an astonishing 8.9 rating. Some cry every time they watch it, others can't bear to watch it a second time. Many say they were deeply moved by the emotional bond between a father and his daughter. This film is none other than the famous Miracle in Cell Number 7. The story is set in 1997, following Yong-gu, a man with an intellectual disability, who raises his daughter on his own. Despite his intellectual disability, Yong-gu's love for his daughter was boundless, even stronger than that of most fathers. To provide for his daughter, he works tirelessly. Although their life is modest, it's filled with joy. However, due to a simple backpack, the father and daughter would soon be torn apart by tragedy. His daughter loved a Sailor Moon backpack, and Yong-gu promised to buy it for her as soon as he got paid. But the day before payday, the last one in the store was sold to someone else. Desperate to get the backpack, Yong-gu tried to take it back, only to be beaten up by the buyer. The next day, the buyer's daughter found Yong-gu and told him that another store had the same backpack, offering to take him there. The two set off together, but as they turned a corner, the girl slipped and fell. By the time Yong-gu caught up, he found the girl lying on the ground, bleeding profusely. He panicked and tried to help. Using the CPR techniques he had learned, he removed her pants and began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But just then, a woman passing by saw the scene. She freaked out, thinking Yong-gu was molesting the girl, and ran to the police. That night, Yong-gu was taken to the police station, with the mental capacity of a 6-year-old. He couldn't explain what had happened and kept insisting he needed to go home to take care of his daughter. But home was no longer an option. The girl who died was the daughter of the police chief. The police took Yong-gu back to the scene to reenact what had happened. In front of a mannequin, Yong-gu repeated his actions, pressing on the chest, slapping the cheeks, and performing CPR, exactly what he had learned from his job. However, to calm public outrage and the police chief's fury, the investigators tricked Yong-gu, telling him that if he took off his pants, he could go home and reunite with his daughter. Believing them, Yong-gu followed their instructions and took off his pants in front of reporters and onlookers. This enraged the crowd, and people rushed forward, beating him mercilessly. A few days later, the court sentenced Yong-gu to death for rape and murder. He was thrown into a prison holding those awaiting execution. When the prison warden heard about his crime, he beat Yong-gu brutally. He was then sent to cell number 7, where all the inmates were hardened criminals.
인사들 합시다.
The cell's leader, a mobster, asked Yong-gu what crime he had committed. But instead of answering directly, Yong-gu blurted out his birthday and rambled on about his extended family. Seeing that he wasn't all there mentally, the mob boss had his sentencing papers snatched. When he read the heinous crime Yong-gu was accused of, he angrily slapped him across the face. Yong-gu, in pain, tried to leave the cell, but 2 other prisoners wrapped him in a blanket and threw him to the ground. All the prisoners surrounded him, kicking him non-stop, as if they wanted to beat him to death. After that incident, Yong-gu became the most disliked person in the cell. During outdoor time, he could only squat in the corner, repeatedly writing his daughter's name in the dirt with a stick. One day, he noticed a strange man sharpening a toothbrush while gesturing towards him, indicating something ominous. When the toothbrush was sharpened to a point, the man, now with a menacing glare, stared straight ahead. Yong-gu followed his gaze. It was directed at the leader of cell number 7. Suddenly, the man, along with his gang, charged at the boss. Yong-gu quickly stood up and ran forward. At the last moment, he pushed the leader out of the way, taking the stab from the toothbrush himself. The leader, now furious, knocked the man out with a few punches, ending the assassination attempt as the guards rushed in. Back in the cell, everything changed for Yong-gu. The inmates made his bed for him, and the leader even thanked him.
와, 장냄새 끊어줬으니까 생이는 뭐 해야지? 뭐 필요한 거 있어?
As it turns out, the leader was a key figure in the prison, able to smuggle in anything. He would deliberately kick the soccer ball out of bounds during free time, and his men outside would toss back a new ball filled with contraband. Seeing Yong-gu's innocent gaze, the leader asked what he wanted in return.
Ye-seung-ryong.
Yong-gu's request stumped him. How could they smuggle a living person into the prison? But the leader was a man of his word. Soon, he devised a plan. During a prison event, Yong-gu's daughter was slipped into the performance group and smuggled into cell number 7 hidden in a large box. When the box was opened, the little girl peeked out. The prisoners all grinned as she curiously looked around, her eyes landing on her father in the corner. Hearing his daughter's voice, Yong-gu rushed over, hugging her tightly. She cried and playfully hit him, complaining all at once. Yong-gu kept apologizing. Though he didn't understand what he had done wrong, the father and daughter cried together, their sobs growing louder. One inmate couldn't take it any longer. The presence of a little girl in the cell would add 2 more years to their sentences if the guards found out. Unwilling to take the fall for someone else, he climbed to the window and began shouting for the guards. The girl begged him not to, and the other prisoners tried desperately to cover his mouth, but his shouting attracted the guards anyway. The girl quickly hid behind the door, sitting on the floor, crying helplessly. The inmate, facing the guard, suddenly became tongue-tied. Just as he was about to reveal everything, the girl grabbed his hand, her pleading eyes silencing him.
빵 하나만 더 주세요.
Seeing this, the other inmates breathed a collective sigh of relief.
자, 먹어라. 먹어.
The girl ran back into her father's arms, this time making sure he didn't cry out loud. Everyone was astonished a man as simple as Yong-gu had such a clever daughter.
아빠, 왜 여기 있어? 아빠 나쁜 사람 아니잖아.
아빠 나쁜 사람 아니야.
여기는 학교야, 학교. 나쁜 데는 아니고. 응? 이거 먹어.
학교 아니야. 여기 감옥. 다 나쁜 사람들.
No one held Yong-gu's actions against him, though there was some awkwardness in the air. But just as the father and daughter basked in the joy of their reunion, trouble loomed. Their 2-hour visit was cut short when the choir left early, making it impossible for the girl to slip out unnoticed. She was now stuck in cell number 7. While the father and daughter were thrilled to be together, the rest of the prisoners were stressed. They spent their days figuring out how to smuggle the girl out while avoiding the guards, who patrolled the cell multiple times a day. If caught, they would be imprisoned for life. Yet, with the girl around, the once cold and grim cell number 7 began to come alive. The tough, hardened men became tender-hearted, treating her as if she were their own daughter. Not long after, one of the inmates, nicknamed Glasses, received word that a religious event would take place at the prison the next day. The leader decided that the girl would dress in church robes and blend in with the group, using the chaos to escape. That night, before bed, the little girl tearfully apologized to her father. She felt guilty if it weren't for her desire for a new backpack. Maybe her father wouldn't have been falsely accused of murder, but her simple-minded father didn't mind at all. For him, if his daughter wanted something, even if it was the moon and stars from the sky, he would do everything in his power to get them for her. The next day, the little girl was hidden in a cart and wheeled toward the stage. According to the plan, she was supposed to blend in with the performers. However, when they arrived, they realized the event was actually a Buddhist ceremony with monks. Back in the cell, the mob boss flew into a rage and gave Glasses a thorough beating. How could a grown man not tell the difference between Buddha and Jesus? Meanwhile, the warden, while reviewing photos from the event for publicity, noticed that a little girl in one of the pictures was missing. With his years of experience as a police officer, he quickly sensed that something was wrong. He ordered the guards to check every cell. Once again, the prisoners hid the girl behind the door. But this time, the guards were prepared. With a knowing look, the warden squatted down and opened the lower panel of the door. Just as the prisoners were feeling proud of their quick thinking, the warden had already moved to the door, standing behind it with sharp eyes. Outside, heavy rain began to pour. The warden ordered his men to immediately remove the girl from the prison. Yong-gu, shackled and following behind, pleaded desperately with the warden in his limited words.
남의 딸은 죽여놓고 네 딸을 보고 싶어!
Yong-gu was then bound hand and foot and thrown into solitary confinement. But that night, another major incident occurred in the prison. One of the inmates, after hearing about what had happened in cell No. 7, stole a can of gasoline and set a fire in hopes of seeing his family again. As the flames grew larger, the warden ordered the other prisoners to be evacuated to the yard while he stayed behind to persuade the inmate to leave. However, the crazed man refused to budge, worried for the warden's safety. Yong-gu, who had been evacuated, saw the warden collapsing from the smoke. Without thinking about the danger, Yong-gu rushed back inside. When the warden awoke, he found himself in the medical room, with a burned and injured Yong-gu nearby. Realizing that this kind-hearted man had saved his life, the warden began to question how someone like him could have committed such a terrible crime. As a gesture of gratitude, the warden allowed Yong-gu to meet with his daughter again. The two spoke of how much they missed each other through the glass, but their reunion was short-lived, and visiting time ended quickly. Yong-gu had so much more to say to his daughter, but the guards dragged him away. Struggling to stay close, he broke free one last time, while his daughter pounded on the glass in tears, begging him to remember to eat well. Witnessing the deep bond between father and daughter, the warden fell into deep thought. How could a father who loved his daughter so much commit such a heinous crime? His doubts about the case only grew stronger. Soon after, the little girl became seriously ill from missing her father. When the warden visited her, she cried and asked him questions he couldn't answer, leaving him in tears as he walked away.
같이 잡아가시면 안 돼요? 네?
Back at the prison, the warden made a bold decision, ignoring the objections of his subordinates. Shortly after, Cell No. 7 received a special delivery. Seeing the box, Yong-gu eagerly shouted his daughter's name, thinking he was imagining things. The boss smacked him, saying he was going crazy for missing her. But when the box was opened, out popped his beloved daughter. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yong-gu hugged her tightly, while the prisoners were shocked by her sudden appearance. The guards smiled and explained that it was all arranged by the warden. From then on, the little girl was allowed to visit the prison every weekend. The once cold and lifeless Cell No. 7 was filled with laughter and joy once more. The smart and lovable girl quickly became everyone's treasure. She even taught the illiterate boss how to read and borrowed a phone from a classmate so homesick prisoners could call their families. To thank the warden for his kindness, Yong-gu visited his office to express his gratitude. As he was leaving, the warden stopped him and asked, "Why did you kill that little girl?" But Yong-gu, with the mind of a 6-year-old, couldn't give an answer. How could someone like him know how to defend himself? The warden then began investigating the case. He borrowed the original case files from a friend and discovered that Yong-gu's confession was remarkably detailed, far too coherent for someone with an intellectual disability. Furthermore, aside from writing his daughter's name, Yong-gu couldn't write anything else, which further confirmed the warden's suspicions. The warden approached the police chief and pleaded with him to reopen the case. However, the chief, blinded by the grief of losing his daughter, refused the request outright. Yong-gu's case was headed for its final trial, the only chance to clear his name. The prisoners in Cell No. 7 were determined to help him, working together to piece together the details of what really happened. Through reenacting the events, they finally understood the truth. The girl had slipped on a patch of ice, and as she fell, she pulled on a rope attached to a brick. The brick had struck her on the head, killing her instantly. It wasn't murder, it was a tragic accident. As for why Yong-gu had removed the girl's pants, it was because he was trying to improve her circulation, something he had learned in a CPR class. Worried that Yong-gu wouldn't remember these details under pressure, the inmates wrote out a new testimony for him to memorize. Over the following days, they made sure he recited it everywhere while running, hanging laundry, even while using the restroom, ensuring he wouldn't freeze up in court. During their outdoor time, they rehearsed the entire trial process to make sure nothing went wrong. Eventually, under the watchful eyes of his daughter and the other inmates, Yong-gu could recite the testimony flawlessly. The boss even wrote a petition and had every inmate in the prison sign it to bolster their chances. The day of the trial finally arrived. On the way to court, the warden unlocked Yong-gu's handcuffs and reassured him not to be nervous, but their worst fears came true in the courtroom. Yong-gu's expression turned blank and vacant, as it often did, when the lawyer asked if he had struck the girl with a brick. The courtroom erupted in chaos, with the audience standing up to hurl insults at him. What no one knew was that just before the trial, the police chief had met with Yong-gu in private. He beat Yong-gu and threatened him, saying that if he didn't confess, his daughter would meet the same fate as the chief's daughter. That's why Yong-gu confessed. Looking back at the cold-hearted police chief and then at his daughter, he became even more certain and admitted to the crime. The warden stood up, arguing that Yong-gu was mentally unfit, but Yong-gu kept repeating that he was guilty. The outcome was predictable. The court upheld the original death sentence. Afterward, Yong-gu's daughter stopped visiting the prison, missing her dearly. He could only write her name on the glass. Seeing how broken he was, the inmates decided to help him escape. And so, the most heartwarming prison break plan was born. This time, it wasn't just Cell No. 7 involved. The entire prison joined in. They constructed a giant, colorful hot air balloon. One beautiful evening, the inmates sent Yong-gu and his daughter up into the sky, carrying them off on a dream of freedom. Even the guards waved goodbye as the balloon rose. Unfortunately, the plan was foiled by the prison's large security net. Everyone knew the escape wouldn't succeed, but they had put all their effort into making this dream come true. The day of Yong-gu's execution fell on his daughter's birthday. The warden brought her to Cell No. 7 for one last birthday celebration with her father. The inmates gave her gifts, and Yong-gu finally gave her the Sailor Moon backpack he had promised. On that day, 5 inmates and his daughter signed their names on his prison uniform. After saying goodbye to his friends in Cell No. 7, Yong-gu and his daughter walked out hand in hand. The warden glanced at the names written on Yong-gu's uniform and lowered his head in resignation. As the iron door closed behind them, Yong-gu was led to the execution chamber. He smiled at his daughter and made a silly face, but as soon as he rounded the corner, he collapsed to the ground. His daughter stared at the corner, counting, just as she always did, but this time, when she reached 3, her father didn't appear. Realizing she would never see her father again, she ran back, grabbing the bars of the gate and sobbing uncontrollably. The man who had never cried throughout the ordeal was now sobbing his heart out. He regretted it all. He wanted to live. He knelt on the ground, begging everyone to save him. Tears welled up in the warden's eyes. No one in the prison could save him. The world couldn't save this innocent father. After Yong-gu's death, the warden took in his daughter, under the loving care of the warden and his wife. She grew into a strong, intelligent young woman, but she never forgot her father. Years later, through hard work, she became a lawyer. She reunited the men from cell No. 7 and had them testify in court, using facts and evidence to clear her father's name. The court finally ruled Yong-gu innocent. Justice may have been delayed, but it was never denied. After 15 years, the wrongful conviction was overturned. In her mind, she saw the colorful hot air balloon again, with a simple-minded man and a little girl waving at her. This time, soaring over the prison walls, flying toward freedom and happiness. The end.